All right, welcome Bruce Pardy to the Biodigital Convergence Transhumanist Report, or as I like to call it on YouTube, Sheepdogging with Tom Deans. First and
Thank you, Tom.
foremost, let's
Thank you, Tom.
the
Great to
bio.
be here. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks, Bruce. We appreciate your time, man. You got a lot of good insights, and I like the ideas, man, because you're an out-of-the-box thinker, and we need a lot more of these types of people now that we're kind of fighting against the collective, I call it, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, so you are a professor of law at Queen's University and executive director of Rights Probe, a law and liberty project of the Energy Probe Research Foundation. You're also an outspoken advocate for Alberta independence, and you've written a proposal for what the Constitution of the Free Country of Alberta should look like. So I have read it. And I really like guys that can put their ideas together in that manner. And I think we should consider all things, right, as we're trying to create something new. So welcome to the show. Is there anything you'd like to just say right off the bat, or I can dive in with a few
Oh,
questions?
just dive right in. Where you go?
Okay, dive right in. Okay, so well, the first thing that comes to my mind right now, right? Okay, so Elections Alberta actually verified the signatures. So that's kind of like one thing that I just want to bring attention to right off the bat. I think it was over 222,000 signatures, at least that they confirmed, right? Which is good. I'm sure it was higher. We submitted 301,000 signatures originally. Of
Yeah.
course, that was a big part of that being a canvasser, right? So you're out there, you're seeing like a lot of people that really want to create something new. Then of course you're seeing the ones that have this strange like blind, like I call it blind patriotism, like to a country to me that's no longer really serving our best interests is the way that I look at it now. Like because it's like a lot of times when you're presenting some of the facts or some of the people that are presenting very factual information, like a guy that I can think of too. There's Keith Wilson, right? He tries to
Hmm.
bring information, especially from a monetary point of view, right? Like why we need to do something different. And
Yeah.
also, what comes to mind right off the bat too is that they had a referendum on equalization, like reform, which I think we got like 61%, or don't quote me on the number, but like then nothing happened. Like I think that was during the Kenny era. Like, and actually another thing that comes to mind too is also, I'll get to you in a second here. Just you debated Jason Kenney, and I remember you saying like the one thing you agreed with him on was like it's like people almost want this welfare type of system. I that's not word for word or verbatim, but can you talk about that like right off the bat? Like,
Sure.
what do you think people want in this country? Like, where are we really going? And
Right.
way
So this is one thing that Jason said that made me think, I wonder if he's right.
yes.
And he might be right. And if he is right, then that does not bode well. And the one thing he said was, and I'm going to paraphrase here,
Yeah.
the the most people in Alberta will continue to want and expect a full service welfare state. Meaning whether Alberta is independent or not.
Mhm.
If that is true, it's a big if, but if that is true, then why bother?
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons to become independent is to get out from under the system that you're in. And that system is essentially a nanny state, a managerial state, a situation in which governments, bureaucracies, courts even are controlling your lives.
Mhm.
And that's what a full service welfare state comes along with. So when we say a full service welfare state, we're talking about a vast machine that operates in Canada, both at the federal and provincial level. So right now, Alberta has a full service welfare state. It has a managerial state. And for my money, one of the objectives of independence would be to get rid of it. Because if you're not going to get rid of it, if Alberta becomes independent and then more or less reproduces what it already has and what Canada has now, that is, for example, you keep the Westminster system of government, you keep the Crown, you keep the basic structure of the Constitution, you keep the idea that it is the government's role to provide services and solve social problems. Okay. That's what you've got now, and that is the source of the problem. Because once you give government that mandate, what we have seen happen over decades is going to happen, which is that mandate is going to expand, and the need for government is going to expand, and the number of people working for government is going to expand, and the amount of money spent is going to expand. There's no way to put a limit on it. You can't go to a constitution and reform it by simply writing down a sentiment, as in, well, the government should contain itself to a certain size or the like. Okay? That doesn't work, because the people who are in government, and in fact, for that matter, the people who are outside it, as Jason's comment suggested, believe that that's what government is for. The thing that you're trying to defeat, I hope, is that idea. Governments are not there to either provide services or to solve social problems. What is government there to do? Why do we have a state? My answer is you need a state to protect your freedom. One of the ways it does that is to keep the peace. In other words, let's just define freedom for a minute. For my money, freedom means this. I'm talking about political freedom now, legal freedom. What does freedom mean? You are free if you are not subject to the force of other people, including the government. In other words, you can't be coerced. Somebody can't come along and say, you will do this, or we will, either hurt you or we'll throw you in jail. Okay? That is not free. If you have the absence of that, then you are free. You can do what you want. You can do what you want, except the one thing you cannot do is encroach upon the freedom of the people. You can't use force against your neighbor, just like he can't use force against you. If that is the rule for everyone, then everybody is free. But here's what that means. If everybody is free in that sense, then nobody can be made to fund services for other people. And that means all of those things that we take for granted are gone, have to go. Let's make a short list. It's a very, very long list, but just a short list to start off with. Public health care is funded by the state, which means it's funded by taxes, which means the state is coercing you to give up your money. Okay? If you are free, that can't happen. If you are free, you are not obliged to fund public schools. So those are my first two, but it's a very, very long list, right? And Jason's point was, well, we're not going to, Albertans are not going to be willing to give those up. And here's my concern. Maybe he's right. And if he is right, then for my money, this becomes kind of pointless. Like, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to get to? A lot of Albertans, thank goodness, say that they want to live in a free country. They aspire to live in a free country, and they recognize that Canada has become something else. Great. But then the question is, okay, but what do you mean? And if you mean freedom in the same sense that I do, that means that all these things have to go, and they have to be given over to the market. So people sometimes think this, well, everybody needs health care. How are we going to get health care? If we have no public health care, we're going to have no health care. Okay. That's not what it means.
Yeah, I get it.
What it means is that the government is no longer the obstacle to getting healthcare services. If the government gets out of the business, then you will suddenly have an open market, and people will be astonished at the services that would then be available at competitive prices. And by the way, you're not being taxed in the meantime. So you have a whole lot more money to use for your own interests. It would work better, but the point is you would be free to do it your own way, and so would everybody else.
Yeah, you definitely have a much broader understanding to me of freedom than I would say some. Yeah, because we like you said, you mentioned like the nanny state, like the managerial state, like it's kind of like almost like a comforter blanket, right? And because some people are just they're just petrified, right? Like I mean, and just even people within my own circles, right? Just hearing the things that you say, they'd be like, "Oh no, there's no way," right? But I mean, I have an open mind, because I think if you structured it in the right way, and it's almost like free enterprise, right? I mean, you're yeah, like it's interesting stuff. Like I find I've never heard anyone quite put it the way that you do, right? But and I'm open to that. I think people need to consider like things that you propose, and if we become independent, to consider like yeah, I mean to me, my personal view is I would get rid of the Westminster style. I mean, some people won't like me saying that, but I really don't see the need of having the king and these governor generals, lieutenant governors. You know, the whole way the system works to me needs to change. And yeah, like I'm a big one on evidence-based decision making, and you, of course, too, are able to define freedom in a way that I think most people don't understand. Like, so it's key because you understand. I understand the way that you frame it, but you're very logical with the way you build your case, with the way that you understand the words. Because I find lawyers are really good at understanding the way, at least I think, words are going to be defined, right? Because I've read your Constitution, and I find that you build it in a logical, sequential way. Like, especially too when you're talking about the state being empowered in a sense to prevent others from using force against you, and
Right,
so on and so
right,
forth, right?
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
So,
Well, there's some tricky stuff when you're setting up a constitution, and one of them is this: there are two basic questions that a constitution needs to answer or can answer. The first one is the one that most people focus on, and it deserves um, attention for sure. But
mhm,
that is the question of what, like, what are the principles? What are the rules going to be? And that's all
mhm,
very well. But the other question is equally important, which is who? Like, who gets to decide these things? Who gets to
yeah, that's right.
interpret the words of the Constitution? Who gets to hold political power? How are those people, selected, right? And there's a danger because we experience life under the existing Constitution. We know it doesn't work very well, and we think we identify the mistakes that we're making, and we think sometimes that we can just go to the Constitution or a new Constitution and write down the sentiments that we have come to because of the experience.
Hmm.
But the mistake is to think that just because you write something down in the document, that's what you're going to get, because that's not true. Let me just take an example. In the
Hmm.
existing Constitution, the Canadian Constitution, everybody knows we have a whole roster of charter rights. And if you read the document, it says everyone is guaranteed, for example, the freedom of expression. Okay. Now, if you just read those words, you think, listen, it's guaranteed. This is the Constitution. I have freedom of speech. That's what it says.
Hmm.
And we all know that that's not the way it is.
Yeah.
So how can the Constitution say that in words,
Hmm.
and then when you see what the results are, it's not so. I mean, it's so sometimes. It's so
Yeah.
in particular cases. Sometimes courts say yes, and sometimes they say no. But in Canada, there are all kinds of restrictions and compulsions on speech. So how can those two things coexist? And the reason is this: under the existing Constitution, and for that matter, under all existing constitutions, the words of the document are not the final call. In our system, the Supreme Court of Canada, the apex court, the court that can dictate the meaning of the words to the rest of the legal system, has the last word on what the words mean. And so inside this
Hmm.
very sort of bald statement that we all are guaranteed freedom of speech are limits that are not articulated, they're not described.
Yeah.
And so the court comes along and says, well, okay, everybody's guaranteed freedom of speech. What does that mean? We're going to tell you all now where the line
Yeah.
is between free and not free. And by the way, we also have Section 1 in our pocket, which we will go to, which enables the government to set reasonable limits. So as a result of this, we have all kinds of restrictions on speech in this country. And yet we still think of ourselves as a country with free speech. So it doesn't do. You can't just list, for example, you just can't list more rights. We have to have, the right to bear arms. I mean, I agree that we should. But if you just say, well, we have the right to bear arms, that in itself does not guarantee very much because the power to interpret the word still exists. So a lot of attention has to be on who as well as on what. And the who I like to think of as an architectural project, as in you can't just hand off the power to make the decisions to somebody and try and trust that they will be honorable people and do the right thing. That doesn't work. You have to limit the ability of any particular group of people to entrench itself into the machinery of government so that they control what happens. And this is what's happened in Canada. We have a political class. We have a bureaucratic machine that sets agendas and sets policies and makes decisions of all kinds. We have powerful courts, especially the Supreme Court of Canada, that is done as I described. We are ruled by the people that run those institutions. We are not governed by the Constitution itself because the Constitution allows this to happen. Let's put it another way. Our Canadian Constitution, and for that matter, all the other ones that you're familiar with, especially the US, none of these constitutions prescribe a managerial state. And none of them say, we are going to have a managerial state. It's going to operate this way. We're going to empower it that way. It doesn't say that. But nor does it prevent or prohibit a managerial state.
Yeah.
And if it's not set up so to prevent one, to make it impossible to have one, then that's what you're going to get.
That's fair. Yeah, and I like the way that when you actually work through your constitution, you kind of speak to that a little bit, right? How almost like you can de-incentivize people from wanting to be a part of government per se, right? Like I like your strategy, right? Like it's interesting because yeah, I mean like, so basically you get people that really I think your aim is to get people that want to be a part of this just more so just for the good of the people and the protection of the state, right? As opposed to them looking for like power and personal benefit, Yeah. So yeah, I encourage. Yeah.
Well, one of the ways to do that, and you have to combine these things together so that you have an architecture that creates a result in total. But one of the ways to do this is to make sure that people work on behalf of the state for very short periods and then get out. It's like a revolving door. I've described it as trying to get an amateur ruling class, not a professional one, not bureaucrats who are, 35 years inside the machinery of government. No, those people are powerful. They are the deep state, people you can't get rid of, people who exercise control without transparency, and so on. You need a revolving door, people who work for the state in any capacity, whether it's as a politician or a bureaucrat, a judge, an ambassador, an expert, a technocrat. 8 years, I've suggested. Now you can pick any number, in a range, but I've said 8 years. 8 years total. Nobody can work for more than 8 years over their lifetime for the state. And if you have that set up, then there is no incentive for anyone to try and establish little empires inside the workings of government because they're not there to benefit from it. You go in, you do a job, you get out, and you're done. And you go back to what you were productively doing in the private sector, which is what most of us should be doing in the first place. One of our many problems is that we have far too many people working for the state in some capacity. And it's not just, for the federal government. We have so many public bodies, which are government bodies at every level of government, federal, provincial, municipal, and so on. our economy, our society is being taken over by government bodies. And everybody thinks this is perfectly normal. It's not. This is crazy. But in order to fix that, you gotta make it impossible in your constitution for this to happen.
And like, yeah, and yeah, because you mentioned before too that the Constitution is supreme law, right? At least ideologically speaking, right? That's supposed to be the top of the pyramid. I remember you, and then you talked about the the statutes and the legislation that rolls out, and then common law. Like I like the way, like I like simplifying things, right? It works for me, right? Because I'm a kind of a simple guy, but I find when people take like I'm all about taking like your wisdom and knowledge, if I can put it that way, and simplifying it down because that gets people interested. And for at least for me, right? And then it's like, okay, I can build from that. It's like, okay, I understand the concept now a little bit, right? And I like the way that some of you guys are doing these things because I find that's how you really actually successfully, like, do you actually want to educate people or do you just want to walk around parading how knowledgeable you are, right? Or do you actually really want to try and impart that in someone else, right? Like that, to me, you should want your students to actually like take some of what is within you and it kind of grows in a little bit different way in the other individual, right? So
Right, right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, like just like I just have a random question about your students.
sure.
Like how is it with the students, like just even in at Queens, like just with the mindset that you're dealing with people coming in, like because you see all this stuff, right? Like I have no idea. Like what is the attitude towards it, or if they share that with you, because they probably know, right? You're kind of all about Alberta independence, but you're kind of like the Albertan Ontarian, which is
Yeah.
good, right? Like I give you credit for that because at least you speak your mind. Like you're just I like that, right? I think that's
Listen,
good.
if you don't speak your mind, then like
Yeah.
what,
What do you really have, right? You're
what do
just
you
an
got? What do you
automaton.
got? Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Right.
think it's good. Yeah. So, well, I mean, what's it like with the students? Like what's the thinking? Because you deal with all these law students. What do they think? What's
Well, they are not of one mind about anything. I mean,
yeah,
they're not a monolith, which is great. And sometimes it's difficult to know exactly because what we speak about
yeah,
in class is not always,
not really. Yeah,
Alberta independence or other kind of political questions. Sometimes
yeah.
we get some things, but that's not the subject
The
matter that
focus. Yeah, yeah.
we're
I got
talking
it.
about most of the time. And I do regularly. Oh, this is over a course of years. Every once in a while, someone comes and expresses the thought that the experience that they have in university and in law school has been rather narrow in the sense that many people, and I certainly don't want me to say all, because not the people are not robots. They're not all
Yeah.
singing from the same page, but there is a prevailing approach, a prevailing ideology, a prevailing set of premises that seems to be what they hear. And they sometimes express relief that they are hearing something
Something
different
different.
every
Yeah.
once in a while,
No,
right?
that's fair. Yeah, yeah. That's fair. No, we can leave it at that. I mean, it's. I think it's good. I think it's good to think outside of the box. I think it should be encouraged, like especially with someone like with what you're doing. I mean, it's not like there needs to be some changes, and I mean, I would encourage that throughout all the provinces. In my view, you just
Yes.
need to look at it factually too, right? Like it's kind of like one thing that comes to my mind is just there's between Quebec and Ontario, there's 200 seats, right? Federally speaking, right? And Alberta's got
Sure.
37. And, of course, there's more population between Ontario and Quebec. I think there's about 25 million people, give or take. And I mean, so to me, that is Canada. Like that, basically, like you win over the people there, federally speaking, and that really forms, like they call it Windsor, Quebec City corridor, right? But I mean, that region to me really, like, it was Upper and Lower Canada. Like I've studied a little bit more now, and the Maritimes as well. And to me, that was the core of Canada. They were basically a group that were against American independence too, right? Like maybe not
Yes,
all of them,
that's
but like,
right. That's
yeah,
right. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I yeah, they were the loyalists, right? Like the for the most
You
part.
know, and if you want to interpret it that way, that goes a long way to explaining Canada's current hangups
Yeah,
about the Americans.
yeah,
You could say anti-Americanism is one of the reasons for the country's existence.
I
The,
agree.
pe- the
Yeah,
people who came up from the States who wanted to escape the revolution, the Canadians who were already there, as they then were, who were loyal to the king, who declined
yeah,
the offers to join the revolution, the sort of the British intention to halt the Americans' expansion by having a territory there consisting of people who were loyal to the crown. I
yeah,
mean, that sentiment survives,
yeah.
and it's one of the sources of Canadian hubris, if you like. It's one of the sources of the Canadian belief that they are morally superior to the Americans. And I'll bet you most people don't understand exactly why they think that. It's just been
Mhm.
bred into them.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's a very unfortunate and ugly and not borne out not borne out by the facts, frankly. But it's one of the burdens that this country carries along. But if you want to, we can state Canada's problems in all kinds of different ways. Here are two ways. One is to say
Yeah.
it's constitutional, because our constitution has not gone well now. It's along with the system of governance that we have, the Westminster system, the Crown, and so on. The way
Well, we
the
have
way
no
it works,
property rights, right?
we have no property rights. But so property rights is very interesting, right? Because
Yeah.
Pierre Trudeau's original draft
Yes.
of what eventually became the charter did include property rights.
That shocked me. I know I heard that from you. Yeah.
Pierre
Yeah.
Trudeau included property rights in his original draft, and it was apparently because of the objections of some of the premiers that was taken out.
It's
But
yeah.
but but on the other hand, even if it was in, and we'd be better off with it in than out, of course. But even with it in, it's no panacea, because what the guarantee of property rights says, and they tend to say, as it does in the American Constitution, it says the right to private property and the right not to be deprived thereof, except by due process of law and compensation. In other words, what they're saying is actually your property can be taken away, but what comes along with that is a requirement to pay you market value for it. So your property can be compensated even under the US Constitution. If the government says, well, we want to build a highway or a pipeline or a port, then we're going to take your house. See, that's not much of a guarantee. It's better than having no guarantee,
Yeah.
but it still subjects you to the decisions
Yeah.
of the rulers to decide when your property has to be given up in the interest of the general welfare. Okay, that's not much of a guarantee. And so
No.
what I'm trying to do is make it a whole lot better than that. We're trying to flip the script, if you like, on the existing system. So I'm sure you've maybe heard me say this before, but in the existing constitution, both in Canada and the States, there is a default position, even more so in Canada than the Americans, but it goes like this. The state in Canada, and by the state, I mean all of the various parts of the state together. I mean provinces and federal government. I mean legislatures and parliaments and bureaucracies, the ministries, the workers, and the courts. All of these parts of the state all together. When I say that word, the state, I mean all of that together.
Yeah.
The default is the state can do anything. Its powers are unlimited. It has unlimited subject matter jurisdiction. Some belong to the provinces, some belong to the feds, but in total, one or the other can do anything. That's the default. And then what we've claimed to do is to provide exceptions or limitations. You can do anything you want if you're the legislature, except you can't infringe freedom of speech or the like. Okay? All powerful, except. That's the default. That's how it works. Okay? I want to flip that around. And the flip goes like this. The state can do nothing.
Yeah.
It is powerless. It has no subject matter jurisdiction except. And we're going to set us a few exceptions because you want the state to do something. Like we referred to earlier, the idea that the state was needed to keep the peace. Okay. That's one of the exceptions. We want the state to keep the peace. We want to have police force. But what we're into now is deliberately deciding what kinds of roles we want the state to have. We don't want to give the state the very broad mandate to seek out the common good, because that could mean anything. And that's what they do now. In the guise of common good, they make rules about everything under the sun. And we can't have that. So the default is you're powerless. You can't do anything except for, these few things. And the first three things that I think should be listed in this list of exceptions to give the state something to do. Number one, keep the peace. That is, enforce the rule that says nobody can use force against anybody else. And number two, to provide a way for you and your neighbor to resolve disputes. When your neighbor builds a fence over your backyard, you want a place to go. That's a court. That's part of the state. So keep the peace, resolve disputes. And number three, protect the country, right? You want a military. You want borders. You don't want everybody just walking in when they feel like it. You've got to protect the country or you don't have a country. So if you have those three things to start, and frankly, not very much else, then you have the state now doing the things that are absolutely essential to maintaining your freedom, but not very much else, so that it doesn't have the power to overwhelm that freedom and take it away.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, I like the fact that you referred to common good, because that means different things to different people with different ideologies, right? So like
Exactly.
if you get the group think like more on the left, if you will, right? Then what the common good is to them is going to be different than what it would be for people on the far right, if you want to put it that way.
That's
I
exactly right.
understand that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why I find it really interesting though. I'm trying to understand you, right? And what you're saying, and I feel like I got a good handle of that, and I like a lot of your ideas. But tell me this though, is there like a country in the world that has something in place? No, similar to what you're proposing?
No, and
No.
here's one of the many reasons why.
Okay.
Because the effect of this kind of a constitution would be to severely reduce the power of governments and the people who run them. And therefore, those governments would be totally opposed to this kind of measure.
Yeah.
I mean, who is it that's going to champion this if what you're doing is undermining your own status and power?
Yeah.
In other words, this, let me put it this way. In my own opinion, this would work. And that's the problem with it politically. The problem with it is it would actually work. And therefore, all the powerful people in your government are going to run away from it, because it will take their control away. It will take their flexibility away. It will mean that they are not able, they do not have the mandate to go out there and solve the problems that they perceive. Okay? None of their business.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I like that.
That's a threat, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean it's, and also too, I know you mentioned something about the salaries being like like the average income, right? Of like, yeah, like I think these are good things. That'll terrify them, right? No, no, they
Yeah,
don't want
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah,
if you're the premier, well, we wouldn't be a premier, but let's say call it a president of an
yeah,
independent country, of an
yeah,
independent Alberta. You're the president of the independent country of Alberta.
yeah,
Then you would be paid, number one, the same thing as everybody else who works for the state, and number two, that salary is the national median wage. That is the middle wage,
yeah. It's
right?
interesting. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so right then and there, all the power hungry people are gone, right? Like, no,
Yes,
like they're just, yeah, they'll be just focusing on their own businesses. And I guess, but that's the idea, right? Is like,
that's totally the idea. That's
yeah,
totally the idea. You
yeah,
want all the ambitious people, to be
I get what
spending
you're
their
saying.
time
Yeah,
in the private sector.
yeah,
You don't want them in the government. I mean, I'm not saying we don't want competence in the government, but
I know what you mean. Yeah,
you don't
yeah,
want the people who are trying to number one make a fortune, and number two have status and power. You don't want those people attracted to government.
yeah. Well, it certainly wouldn't attract them to government. I can tell you that, right? If they listen to what you're saying, they'll be like, no, no, I don't want this. But
Right.
yeah, it would change things, wouldn't it? It would be interesting to actually have like a pilot project, right? With just to see what would happen. And yeah, there's something also too, you address some of the stuff in the judiciary at the executive level too. Like I don't know, like you're looking at because I do see those three. Well, there's the executive, judicial, and
Yeah,
legislative.
yeah. Well, so here's one of the paradoxes. For my money, a constitution has to resolve a paradox, and that central paradox is this. We've alluded to it, but it goes like this. On the one hand, we need a state for us to be free, because without the state, your neighbors can beat you up, and then you're not free because you're subject to
Yeah,
their force. On the other hand, apparently, the experience has shown that we can't be free with a state because what it tends to do is to take its force and to push us around. Okay? We can't be free with it and you can't be free without it. Okay? That's a
mhm,
paradox.
yeah,
And the Constitution has to resolve that. And one of the difficulties is that the choices that we've had, so in our system, it looks like you have to choose someone to have the last word on what the law is. Okay, and here are the
yeah,
two main choices. Okay, we use the following labels. You can have legislative supremacy, or you can have judicial supremacy. And legislative supremacy, which is what essentially they have in the UK, it means that the legislature can make any laws it wants, and there are no restrictions. There's no constitutional rights. There's no other thing. You can't run off to a court to say, oh, the parliament didn't have the authority to make that law. No, no, no. Legislative supremacy, parliamentary supremacy. The
hmm,
parliament can pass any law it wants. And that means
hmm,
any law it wants. So, in theory, I'm not saying they would actually do this, but in
yeah,
theory, if you have no rights, you can't go to a court. In theory, a legislature in a system of pure legislative supremacy could enact a law that says all redheads will be put to death.
yeah,
Okay, no due process,
nothing.
no requirements, just no guilt, no trial. We are supreme. We've legislated the law. That's the law. Go do it. Judicial supremacy is a system in which the court has the final word on whether the legislature is obeying its limits. So if you have a roster of constitutional rights, you have to run off to a court and say, they're doing this. They've just passed a law about this. That's contrary to my right. Please give me a remedy. And sometimes the court says, yeah, you're right. And sometimes it says, no, it's fine, go away.
Yeah,
But the court now has the final call. Here's the
yeah,
problem. Here's the problem. In either of those systems, whoever has the last word tends to be a tyrant. When it's the legislature, you get all kinds of bad laws that infringe upon freedoms. And when it's the court, our experience in this country has been that the Supreme Court of Canada takes upon itself to make up the law to suit its own preferences. They're not just applying the law, they make it up because they are the last word and you can't appeal them. Okay. So we've got to try to find a way not to give that kind of last word to either one of these outfits. And the way to do that is to number one, to limit the jurisdiction of the legislature, which means they are not supreme. But number two, to check the power of the court, and especially the apex court, the Supreme Court. If you have one in Canada, we have the Supreme Court of Canada, to check the power of that court so that you don't end up with 9 people on this court dictating to the country now what the Constitution means. Because what happens is those 9 people essentially have the power to amend the Constitution without amending it, as in saying, well, it says this, but we're going to say that that means that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's now amended. You can't do anything about that. So that group of people cannot have that power, right? So what I've suggested in this proposed Constitution is to do a number of things, but here's one of them. One of the ways that the Supreme Court of Canada imposes their dictates is because they have the doctrine of precedence. What that means is when the Supreme Court of Canada makes a decision about the meaning of the Constitution, that interpretation binds the whole legal system, all the courts beneath it. In other words, for the whole country, essentially, they're saying this phrase in this provision now means X. Power of precedent. All right, so you take the power of precedent away. No precedent. What does that mean? Okay, well, that means now that the Constitution is supreme. Because in every court case, what each judge will have to do is to take the words of the Constitution fresh, as in, okay, this is the rule. Now, I'm going to take account of the fact that the Supreme Court said this about it, and that court over there said this about it. I'm going to consider those things, but those things are not binding upon me. I have the words, and the words of the text alone, that's the only thing that binds me. And so I'm going to interpret those words for the purpose of the case before me and resolve this case. But then what I've said about the Constitution is also not binding on any other court. So it's not perfect, because what you are possibly going to get are inconsistent decisions between judges who say, well, this means this, but no, this one, in this case, it doesn't mean that. That's a danger and regrettable. You want consistency in your law, but the doctrine of precedent hasn't provided that anyway. In Canada, the law in Canada is very uncertain and fluid. And so what we're doing here is trying to undermine the power of what has become sort of a star chamber at the top level, and tell them, you do not get to dictate what the meaning of the Constitution is.
I like that. I think that's really good. Like, because I think when you set precedent, I mean, like that, it becomes very dogmatic, right? And it's lazy for the other party. They're like, well, this judge did this, so I'm just going to follow suit. And I don't like that either. I mean, okay, that's what that judge decided. Like, okay, that's it is what it is. But like, it doesn't mean that. Yeah, like I like that. I thought that was good. I thought that was a really good way of practically. Like, I feel like you have a lot of practical ways of dealing with problems that most people aren't even aware of, like including myself, right? Until like I actually interest myself in these things, right? That's the problem, right? I mean, we're all, my idea of government, like you said, like was to have them in good faith, to be overseers, to do what's right for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is, I think this is one of the major mistakes that we make.
Yeah.
Our system of government is based upon an assumption of good faith.
Yes.
The idea that our leaders will honor the ideas.
Yeah.
That they don't have to. They don't have to. So, one example. The rule of law is just an idea. And the idea is that the law should rule and not the individuals, not the judge, not the politician, not the bureaucrat, the law. The law, that rule of law is the alternative to the rule of persons. Okay? But that's just an idea. And most of the people who are in power now don't believe in that idea. They believe their role is to go out there and fix problems and direct people and modify behavior and regulate speech. And that's not
Yeah.
the rule of law. This is the defining feature of government in Canada now, I would say, is not something called the rule of law. It's discretion in the hands of technocrats. It is,
Mhm.
if you like, I called it rule by law, not rule of law, rule by law, as in the rule is not, the law is now a tool. And
Yeah.
administrative agencies just have the ability to make up new laws on the spot. They make new regulations and guidelines and discretionary decisions. There's no rule of law in this country, not really, not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
Here's one thing. People sometimes think that the rule of law means that we need to have laws. That's not what it means at all. We have lots and lots of laws. But what those laws do, well, they do a lot of things, but one of the things that they do is that they delegate law-making authority to administrative bodies. And those bodies can make up the law as they go. And that is not the rule of law. Right? So we have this idea, and the core idea is that our constitutional thinking is based on, is that the people who are inside these institutions, the politicians, the bureaucrats, and the courts, they will act in good faith for the benefit of the country. And that is often not true. If that is what your Constitution is based on, then your Constitution does not work. Because what you're saying is, well, we insist that, our leaders should honor important ideas, as you honor the Constitution. They should honor the traditions and the principles. If your Constitution depends upon your leaders honoring things, your Constitution is a house of straw. To work, a Constitution has to make it impossible for anyone to dishonor it. And that's not a sentiment. That means it's got to be architectural, meaning there's just no way around it. Right now, we don't have that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, well, you've addressed a lot of the problems for really what they are, and the good faith thing is part of the spell that like hangs over people because they just,
Yes.
yeah, it's like an
Yes.
illusion. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And this is one of the main things that people have to
Yeah.
be exercised from. Their belief in the good faith. Well, in Canada, what we seem to want to do a lot, even amongst those people who understand that we're in bad shape, what they often want to seem to do is have discussions about policies. Like, we can
Yeah.
see lots of bad policies. We should correct the policies. Here's a better policy. But the problem in this country is not, first and foremost, bad policy. Don't get me wrong. We have a lot of bad policy. But the problem is not bad policy. The problem, I would put it this way, the problem is the existence of policy.
Yeah.
The problem is that some people have the power to make policy. Those people shouldn't have the power to make policy. The problem is we have a whole lot of people in government who think their job is to make policy. And what is policy after all? Policy is just a set of rules that
Yeah.
tell people what to do. That's all. That's all policy is. And
Yeah.
so what we need is less, not better, less policy. But this goes back to Jason Kenney's observation. I mean, it may well be in the current day that what people want from their government is better policy, not less policy, better policy. And that's not the way to go.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like I think it's good the way that you're bringing light to the way the system works, and like also too with all these. Well, again, like the senators being appointed, like the Supreme Court of Canada, the 9 judges being appointed.
Yeah,
And like, of course, if you appoint them, you're going to pick people that share probably similar views, right? You're not,
sure.
it's like Trudeau, for example. Like, I mean, I know
Yes.
he's not there now. He's not going to pick like people on the far right side, right, for his appointees.
Well, you know
Uh,
what? So I think you're 100% right. But let's just um, dig a little deeper into that just for a moment, because
yeah,
people
sure.
sometimes think that the accusation is always that the judges that are appointed to the highest courts are political hacks. That liberals only appoint liberal party
Yeah,
loyalists,
no, yeah,
and
let's dig
and
in.
that's not the way I would put it at all. That's
Okay.
not the problem. I mean, that might happen occasionally, but that's not the core of the problem. The problem is that you're appointing fellow members of the Canadian political class. And those people, don't get me wrong, they don't agree about everything, but they have a
Mhm.
similar framework for thinking about the country. They believe in established systems the way they work. And they all tend to believe, sometimes less and sometimes more, but they all tend to believe in the basic premise, which is the role of government is to manage society.
Yeah,
Courts
yeah,
believe that. Legislatures believe that. The
yeah,
politicians all, yeah, I can't think of a politician,
yeah. No, that's right.
right,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
would rail
that's what it
against that
is. Yeah.
idea, and certainly the bureaucrats think that because they're at the center
Mhm.
of this modus of control, right? So when you have all of those branches of government working together on the same project, that means your checks and balances do not check and balance. Everybody's on the same plan. So you can never reverse this thing by appealing to one of those branches because they're all on the same page.
Yeah. You see that, well, especially too, like when, like I'll cite just the general COVID response. I mean, just
Yes.
just how they
Yes.
worked in lockstep.
Right.
And of course, under the premise and under the assumption, right? Like that, I'm going to say that these pharmaceutical companies had the ultimate solution, and how dare you question that? I used to go around saying, well, how dare you question the C19 injectable holy water, right? Because I mean, that's the way it was treated, right?
Yeah.
Now, like we don't have to go down all these rabbit holes, but I mean, the point was it was just, I call it the Santa Claus complex. Like it was just, this is what we're telling you. You just need to trust us and believe what we're saying. And any kind of dissent whatsoever is anathema, right? Like, I mean, you
Yes.
are just,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean,
So let's go back. Let's go back to your observation about common good, which is very pertinent here, extremely pertinent. So what
yeah,
happened during COVID is a really, really good demonstration of a lot of these problems and
yeah,
ideas, right?
yeah,
So what happened during COVID was a reflection of a basic proposition in our government, which is that the government and the people who run it have the discretion to
yeah,
decide the public good, just as
yes,
what you said, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
here's the mistake. Here's the mistake that a lot of people made during COVID. They saw all these rules coming out, and they saw that they didn't make sense, and they saw that the science didn't line up with what the rules were, and
yeah,
they embarked on the following kind of argument. They said, your rules are not, in fact, in the common good. I can show you why this is not in the common good. I can show you why this rule doesn't work. I can show you what's
yeah,
wrong with the vaccines. I can show, and that's totally missing the point. Let's go back to the phrase that I mentioned. Governments and the people who run them have the discretion to decide
yes,
the public good. Okay? It's not
yeah,
up to you. It's not up to you what the common good consists of. It's up to them. They have the discretion to decide
yeah,
what the public common good means. And no argument about science or data
yeah.
or outcome
I get it.
can displace that. You've got to go back to the premise, which is, why do you get to decide the common good?
Exactly.
That's the thing that
Yeah.
must be changed.
That's exactly right. I mean, and it's the perfect example because
Yes,
exactly like you said, they set the mandate or the policy. It's not, if you want to use that word, but and that was it. Like,
yep,
yeah, like regardless, and like you said, like they shouldn't be able to do that in the first place.
right.
It's like, yeah, and under, yeah, the way that's why I understand what you're trying, what you would set up in what I'm going to call Bruce Party's nation. Like I get it, right? Like I get the way that you would, and actually it puts a lot of the, well, you really have freedom to decide in a way that probably no one else has ever experienced before, right?
That's
But
right.
also the personal responsibility is
Yes,
astronomical. It's huge.
that's right. That
Yeah,
is
I
right.
get it,
Yes,
right? I get your thing, right? Like if
yep,
I put it that way, like I
right.
find it interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because it's on you. It's on the
It is on you.
individual.
Yep. So it's almost like a gut check for people who want to be free. It's like,
Yeah.
great, good.
Yeah.
So let's just check on what that means. If you are free, then it's all up to you. You know, you
Yeah.
you get both the benefit and the risk.
Yeah.
You get the upside and the downside. This is
100%.
not a
Yeah.
situation where you'll be saved from yourself. If you are free, then you are making your own calls. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be an atomized individual without contact with the rest of humanity. No, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You cooperate as you wish. You can associate and contract and have
Yeah.
families and friends and communities and so on. This does not mean in any way that people have to be by themselves. It just
Yeah.
means that the role of the state is
It's
extremely
gone.
minimal. Right.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, right? And like what kind of feedback are you getting like on your constitution? Like just the pros and cons. Like what's yeah, tell us about that.
Oh, a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Very, very positive from a lot of people. There's a lot of enthusiasm for, getting to the guts of the idea
Yeah.
of being free. And
What does
and
that mean? Yeah. You
yeah,
define that well, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and trying to avoid the traps, the mistakes that characterize the constitutions that we know. I mean, the gold standard of constitutions that exist is probably the American one still.
Yeah.
But
I
and it's done better over time certainly than ours has. But even the American one now is not working very well because they have a lot of problems with their own version of managerial statism.
yeah.
They have all kinds of deep state problems in the states, and we don't want to reproduce those either. So you really have to take that gold standard. And when I say gold standard, I don't mean that's the one we should emulate. I just mean that of all the ones that exist, it's still
Yeah, it's
probably the
done
best
pretty
one.
well.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's good. Yeah, it's good you're getting good feedback. Yeah, because that's what you want, right? You want to get people engaged and
But to your point, it also sometimes when it dawns on people what the implications are,
yeah.
sometimes they do have to think about it. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wow, like we're not going to have this or that. It means that there's no net to catch me here. It's like, how about that? Like, isn't that neat?
But you might take care of yourself a little bit better then too, right? Like
Right.
I don't know,
That's
you
right.
might think a little bit harder about the choices you make, like because it's like, oh, I can't just walk down the street and get all this, well, free stuff or whatever. Not that it's free, but it's the communal taxpayer system. Like I look at it as a form of I call it white collar criminal theft. It's just
Yep.
endless ways of taking your money, and that's the way I understand it now. It just never ends. It never stops. Right? Like
Right.
and it's like it's like it's not their money, but they have no problem spending it on all these wild ideological projects. It's like 'cause this money doesn't just we're responsible for it, right? It's literally drives me nuts watching a person that gets put into power. They take all this money that's not personally theirs, but yet we're nationally responsible for all the consequences of the crazy decisions they make with our communal money, if I can put it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah. Well, the way I like to think about it is, and I
Yeah.
try to correct people when they speak about government spending its money badly.
Yeah.
I think the idea to keep in mind always is that the government actually has no money.
Yeah, exactly.
Governments have
Yeah.
no money. They are
Yeah,
only spending other people's money in whatever way they do. Right. So
exactly. Yeah. I like see, it's good the way you highlight it that way. And these are good things, right? The more you speak to people, like highlighting that, just those simple things. Like I'm all about just highlighting the simple facts in that kind of way. And then you build your case from those simple points
yes,
because it's
yes,
like this is actually how the system works, guys, right?
that's right.
It's almost like they lie to you, with their campaign, right? And then once they're in that position, and this is again, right? Most people are aware of this, but and then once they're there, it's like, yeah, like then they just start rolling out the machinery, like the policies, right? Like based on whatever it is that their little group wants, right?
That's
This is
right.
the problem. It's one of the problems, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
you see,
no,
people
it's
who are people respond to their incentives, and that applies
yeah,
to people who are in the public sector as well. See, this is it's like we forget.
yeah,
We when we're when well, when sensible people are talking about the private sector, the market, they have no problem in accepting that idea articulated by Adam Smith and others that people act in their own self-interest. Right? That's the way markets work.
yeah,
We produce goods or offer services because people want them and will pay us for them. That's in our own self-interest. This is the way the markets work. You act in your own self-interest and you provide things that other people want, and it works. It's a fantastic mechanism for
yeah,
providing people's needs. People pursue their own self-interest, and in so doing, provide the needs of other people. Okay,
yeah,
they follow their own incentives. They act in their own self-interest. We accept that, but as soon as we turn our attention to the public sector, people in government, we forget that
yeah.
people act in their own self-interest. Everybody who works for governments also act in their own
Yeah,
self-interest.
that's good.
And
Yeah,
that
that's
mechanism
right.
doesn't work so well, right? Now you've got
Yeah,
corruption and collusion and taxation and so on. The limitations are not the same at all. And so what we have to protect against is the self-interest of people who run the state.
yeah. That's no, you got it right, man. Like the way I see it is like, yeah, you're definitely getting to the root cause of it. I'm all about like just working in the mechanical world, right? It's just about figuring out like getting to the root cause and then actually tabling a solution. Now, if your customer doesn't want the solution, whatever. You shake the
Right.
dust off your feet and you
Right.
walk away, right?
That's
because
it.
because yeah, like you can't, even though you're in, right, and other people are in, but yeah, like sometimes they say even though everything you're presenting to them is the right thing to do, then they just go with a different option anyway. So
Right.
then it's like, yeah, okay, well, you did your part, right? That's the way I
Right.
see it. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, what can you do? Some people, it doesn't matter what you tell them. It doesn't matter how many facts they see. They are never going to change. Like, they just want the system the way it is because I feel like we have a system that actually somewhat incubates weakness and removes incentive for you to actually become more productive. Like, I mean, this is the positive side of the capitalist system for you to actually create a business, instead of just relying on I'm going to say a communist style system of support, right? Which comes from the taxpayer, which I'm not, it's not that I have no compassion, right? It's, but
This is very interesting.
yeah.
I think compassion is very important as well, but
Okay.
let's
Yeah.
just
Way in there. Yeah.
drill down a little bit because people often say this. We should have a compassionate society. And by that they mean we should have, government benefits and a social safety net and so on. But
Yeah.
my response would be this. That is not compassion. Compassion is action taken by people. Let's just talk about what government benefits consist of. Government benefits essentially derive from coercion. So here's an example. Let's say that a thief steals your wallet
Mhm.
and he grabs the money in the wallet and he sticks it in a Salvation Army box as a donation. Now, question. Who in this scenario has been compassionate?
Hmm.
Is it
Yeah.
is it
It's
is it you? No, your money was stolen.
Hmm.
Is it the thief? No, he gave your money, not his money,
Yeah, that's right. It's a good
right?
analogy, actually.
So
Yeah.
here's what the government is doing. The government is using its force to extract taxes from people
That's,
and using that money to provide benefits. That's not compassionate. That's using other people's money. The
that's a really good
taxpayer,
analogy.
the
Yeah.
taxpayers have to pay the tax. That's not the choice. That's not. They're not being compassionate. And the people who support the programs are not being compassionate because they're using other people's money to do the thing that they think is important. Right. So if you really want a
That's
compassionate
good. Yeah.
society in the true meaning of the word,
Yeah.
you have no governments involved in this, and people who believe that we have a moral responsibility to look after our fellow men should go and
We'll
do
do
it.
it. You know what? That's excellent, Bruce. Like that's again, I'll say an excellent analogy. Like that's a great way of again, like I call it the simplification, but it makes it so you get it, and then the light turns on. That's exactly what's going on. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And it does make you think, well, like like let's change this, right? That's the
Right,
whole idea,
right,
right?
right,
Alberta
right.
independence, really, it's just we want change,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Like,
yes.
yeah,
And
yeah. I
the
mean,
most dangerous thing is,
yeah,
you'll fight to get to independence,
yeah,
and things won't change.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's the day. Yeah, it is. It is. That is the danger because why would you replace the system with the exact same system with
Right.
just different people, right?
Yes.
But yeah, no, yeah, it's really good. I'm glad actually you're coming around because I heard your three-part presentation with Leighton Gray and Sean Buckley.
Yeah.
And I thought it
Right.
was really, yeah, it was a lot of information. It's something you could listen to like 5, 10 times just to absorb all the information. And you guys are doing us a favor because you're freely, I would say that's compassion too, right? And then of course, if people want to support, they're free to do so, right? And then that's actually kind of the system that you're advocating for, right? So
Yes.
like yeah, I should include that actually in the links too, just because I think it's a really good series and you get yeah, because you guys talk about everything, right? From fee simple property ownership, what that means, Aboriginal title, like the Cowichan stuff, like all
Yeah.
these things that are going on. Because again, when really there are no property rights, like I would say that's how this stuff kind of plays out as well, right? Like
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's there's so many things coming down the pike at us constantly,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's the Cowichan thing, the BC property rights problem, Aboriginal title, and at the same time there's all these, new liberal bills in Parliament,
Oh yeah, never stops.
C9 and C34 and 22, and it's like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And for my money, these all these various things are just symptoms of this same core problem. And that problem is, well, one of the ways to characterize it is to say it's constitutional. It's about the system of government. And you're
Yeah.
not going to be able, every once in a while, you might be able to get a victory by, defeating this bill or solving this problem for a little while.
Yeah.
But
It's
but the problems are not solved. And
it's
and the thing
systemic.
it's systemic. And the thing about this moment for Alberta is you've actually got a chance to start again.
Yeah.
And really, that's the only way to really, truly fix this kind of thing. You can't fiddle at the margins. You got to say, look, the system that we had, it might have worked for a little while some other time. It's
Hmm.
not working now. You can't tweak it. You got to start from scratch.
I agree. And I hope enough of us want to do that. Things are moving forward, thank God. I mean, we've at least elections Alberta because legally that needed to happen. So I think that's a good
Well,
thing.
we can
And
just should we talk about that just for a moment because
yeah, yeah, yeah,
this is
please.
a this is a strange situation. So as you mentioned, Elections Alberta counted the
Yeah.
signatures and like 223, right? And
Is yeah, something like that. Yeah,
something like
pretty
that.
close.
And that's over the threshold of 177.
That's right. Yeah.
But and so it's good to know that the threshold was reached. But
Yeah.
but but the thing is that process now doesn't matter because the government, Danielle Smith and her government, have announced their own question in the referendum. So let's take a
Yeah.
step back for a minute.
Yeah.
It was always the case from the very beginning that the government of Alberta could have called a referendum on independence
Yes.
and done
That's
their
a
own
fact.
question.
Yeah.
You didn't need the Citizen Initiative Act. You didn't need
Nope.
signatures. You didn't need a petition. They could have done it all by themselves. They just didn't want to. So
Yeah.
instead, they relied upon the citizens of Alberta to jump through this hoop, to put the
Yeah.
petition together, to gather signatures and so on, in the hope of getting to the threshold and putting a ballot question on a referendum. Okay.
Yeah.
But then this court thing came along, and the court said, well, the chief electoral officer has the duty to consult, and so we have to put a pause on all this. Okay. That decision came down, and then eventually Danielle said, well, we're going to put a 10th question on the October 19th referendum. It'll say this. Okay. As of that moment, the petition process is over. Doesn't matter anymore. It's done because the government has taken their powers and said, we're going to have a question. And then everything that happens from that point depends upon the outcome of that question. But note what's happened. So the petition process under the statutes required a threshold of 177,000 votes or thereabouts in order to qualify for having this question. Okay. The question that Danielle has put on the referendum is not an independence question.
No.
It's do you want to stay, or do you want the government of Alberta to start the legal process to eventually getting someday to
it's a question on a question. Yeah.
The question on the question. But
Start
here's
the
the
process.
point.
Yeah.
Here's the point. The threshold for having an actual independence question
was mad.
Has changed from 177,000 to 50% plus one.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
In order to get the question that you would have had with 177,000, now you have to win the first vote. And that question on October 19th is now applying a double standard. Okay, if the stay side wins in October, it's done. The whole thing is done.
Yeah.
If the leave side wins in October,
then we begin the process.
All you get is the promise of a maybe sometime future referendum that's under the control of the government, right? Yeah. So my complaint is that the government of Alberta is playing people who support independence.
100%. I mean, yeah. I mean, I get the way you frame that too. It's a shame. Because actually, I think now that they've verified, this is my opinion, this is what I think should happen. Okay, Elections Alberta verified it. Now, that question, that should be changed back to Stay Free Alberta's question, is do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada and become an independent state? That's the question that should be on there right now.
Well,
that's what I
take,
think. But
I think. Well, I agree with you about the idea that 10th question should not be asked. Right?
Yeah.
I would prefer the independence referendum to be its own thing. I do not think it should be the 10th question on that referendum. Here's why.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that design is detrimental to the independence question. Here's why. I think of the Alberta population as divided into three. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but roughly speaking, let's say a third are in favor of independence, a third are staunchly opposed, and there's a middle third that, doesn't really know yet and maybe could be persuaded. A lot of these people are unhappy with the status quo, but they're not quite ready to ditch the country yet. And it is that middle third that will decide the outcome.
Most likely.
The supporters will say yes. The opponents will say no. That is all for sure.
Yeah,
that middle crowd will determine where they fall. Will determine whether or not it's approved or not. Okay, and here's what's likely to happen. They're not happy, this middle group, with the status quo, but they're not quite so convinced about independence yet. They're going to see this roster of 9 other questions, The- There's some policy questions there. There's some constitutional questions there. Like, here's a way that we might be able to pursue a constitutional amendment. Okay, those people, I think, some of them may see those questions and think to themselves, "Look, there's
Yeah.
another way to do this. We don't like the status quo, but here's a way forward. We can fix these policy areas. We can propose."
Yeah. I get it.
Right?
I lost you there, Bruce.
Not understanding that those other the constitutional questions, other constitutional questions, the ones that are implying that constitutional amendments are possible, those are
Right.
not true.
Yeah.
Nothing will happen. You alluded earlier to the equalization referendum,
Yes.
62% or thereabouts.
Yeah. Something like that.
What happened? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing at all happened. That's exactly what will happen to the other questions. And yet, some people may be persuaded that those are a better option than voting in favor of independence. And so, if I had my way, I would say no independence question in October. We'll have a standalone independence referendum with the original Stay Free Alberta question
Okay.
in 2027.
I could go with that too. Yeah. Yeah. Considering in light of how you say that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get your reasoning. Yeah, it's just having it totally separate, and there's lots of people that would I would say would agree with that because it avoids all the distractions too. And I've heard others
Yes.
talk about this too.
Yes.
Yeah, and I get
Exactly.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's probably a better way to go about it. It's a shame. It really is. Because this is a true. I'm going to say somewhat. They're somewhat allowing it, okay? Even with Smith's position and the fact that apparently, like I've heard up to maybe 70% of the UCP base
Yes.
support independence. Like I'm not
Yes.
I'm not a I'm not a numbers guy, but
Right.
but it's so this is somewhat being allowed, but yet yes, the people on the Federalist side are doing everything they can to work it in their favor, which you got to expect that from them. But I guess
Well,
my appeal to
yeah.
people is just like we should do this. Like why not? It's like take a look at the state of the country.
Yes.
How can you look at the history? Look at the facts. Like look at you guys, like the lawyers, like Bruce, all you guys. There's so many. Keith Wilson, there's Rath out there too. I mean, they're all presenting information as to why this system is not working. And it's like, why would you just want to like gravitate towards your security blanket when we could create something powerful for future generations, especially too, like your grandkids,
Yeah.
to have something a lot better than
Oh,
staying.
no kidding. No
Yeah,
kidding. I absolutely. I've sometimes put it this way. This moment that Alberta has with the potential to save itself is actually even bigger than that. I mean, with the way Western countries are going, Canada
yeah,
for sure, but Canada is
yeah.
not the only one. I mean, the Western civilization is unraveling,
I agree.
and Alberta could possibly be the savior of Western civilization. I mean, Alberta could be the America of this century. And by that, I don't mean
Yes,
that it should join America. I mean,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
you
yeah,
could you
I
could
know.
be the new America. You could be the place where liberty lives. You could demonstrate to the world how it's supposed to work.
Yes, and I like that. I like the way. Yeah, 100%. I believe that. I believe that the potential, like I feel that power, if I can put it that way, that it's the potential is there. It's
Yes.
like, and I agree with you. It's gonna take like the exercise of the will of the people here to say yes. Like that's where like I mean, of course, I'm all in, right? But that's what I mean by saying the potential. Like and that's why there's a campaign, right? Like to
Right.
to
Right.
win
Right.
the minds. It's
Yes.
about winning the mind. We're not doing this by force. Like
Right.
we're trying to win the minds of the people, like through I'm going to say most of it factual evidence, right? Based on the history of how the country's governed itself, about the inequalities, the unfair things that are going on for Alberta in general, right? And it's kind of like we can create something new, and the Supreme Court of Canada outlaw or there's a path that's been laid out to do that, right? Because of Quebec, right? Essentially.
Yes. Yes,
So we're
yes,
trying to take
yeah,
advantage of that, right?
yes, yes,
So
and
yeah,
and
like
that is just a it's a lucky historical happenstance that that
yeah,
happened so as to
yeah,
give, instructions on how to carry this out. Now, that doesn't mean that the goalposts might not be moved
of
for
course.
Alberta compared to Quebec, and that the
Yeah,
powers that be, both inside Alberta and especially outside Alberta, won't move heaven and earth to make
no, they
sure that
won't.
it
Yeah.
doesn't happen. So all these things are yet to come, but
Well,
there's at least a bit of an instruction manual.
yeah. And I mean, like, yeah, there's well, they want the money. They know how much money Alberta is
Of
just
course, of
yeah,
course.
like losing Alberta is like it would be devastating to me for
It
Canada.
it
But like the
it Yeah,
Federalists have
yeah.
got to like, why don't you do the right thing? Like if I was on the Federalist cause, like why don't you start campaigning and winning the people over that we need to actually be fair to Alberta? They could do that too, right? Meaning like let's make constitutional changes. That would be my challenge to them. It's like, why don't you start doing the right thing instead of just, okay, this benefits me, so we oppose it. But why don't you look at why the Alberta independence movement is gaining traction? And maybe if you were smart, like you would actually just look at it in terms of like creating a fair business arrangement and business deal that would actually keep Alberta within the country. I mean, the potential's there if they would do that in good faith, but I
Well,
can't
I
see.
think that I think the key there is
Yeah.
to make them be concrete. It's all very well to say, well, let's continue to work inside Confederation to fix it. Like, no, no, no.
Yeah.
We've been trying that for decades. Tell us
That's right.
exactly, tell us exactly what your concrete plan is,
And
and
then
we'll.
it has to be binding in terms of consequential. Like yeah, like you can't just say all this stuff and then just say, oh, we're not doing it. Then to me, we're like, I don't know. It's difficult, but I guess I give them a tiny little bit in the sense that just acknowledge what people are saying for what it is because it's true.
Mhm.
And then it's like if you really are like, the Canadians that you say you are, then you would come up with like to me the proper response, which I have not seen from any of them.
Well, they
Not one of
can't.
them.
There isn't
Yeah,
one. This
well,
is the problem, right? There is
yeah.
no way out of this right now. And
Okay.
so, if there was one, I assume that they would tell us what it was.
Then to me, like it's like for myself, like if that's gonna be like just say if that was the official word on the matter, then to me, yeah, then independence is the only option. That's it. Like
Agreed.
then to me you sealed your own like to me it's done in my heart, right? It's done. I never used to think this way, but I've changed because of the actions that y'all like in the federal government over the last like I would say especially the last decade have done. It's like
Hmm.
take some responsibility. Stop blaming everyone else. Like to me it's they are the problem the way I see it. Like it
Sure,
100%.
no
Like
question.
they are the problem. But anyway, but yeah, no, this has been a good talk, man. I love your stuff. And actually, you know what? Let's pull up your I'll just pull up your Constitution real quick.
Great.
Just so people can actually see it if I pull up the right page. Okay, can you see that?
Yes,
Okay, so okay, I'm at separation of powers, but I think
there we go.
you've got 13 points, right? I'll come up to the top.
That's right.
It's just so people can have a look. All right. Okay, so it kind of starts here, and I appreciate the fact too you being in Ontario and you've done all this work and because you share the same like vision, right? Which I think is great. And originally, to be honest, too, like I was actually born in Quebec
Oh
in
yeah.
Montreal of all places. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I only spent 10 years there. My dad passed away when I was 10 years old, so we ended up moving, spending 10 years in Nova Scotia as well. But the majority of my life, I've been out in Alberta. I've been out here over 20 years. So
Right.
um,
Nice.
okay. So anything you want to highlight just on this website? I
Oh
know.
well, I'm delighted that you put that up there. This is where they can
Yeah.
read what we've been talking about. This is in the C2C journal, as you can see. I'm actually putting together a little book on it as well, so that should be available soon. But
Okay.
that describes the 13 key features that I think will create the constitutional architecture to produce what is actually a free society where people can decide their lives for themselves, and that I think should be the objective.
Okay, that's great, Bruce. Yeah, like so I'll make sure I include that in the links too. So there it is, guys. You can find Bruce on X, of course. You've do you have a YouTube channel of your own? I think
I
you do.
do actually. I haven't
Okay.
been posting an awful lot on the YouTube channel, but it is there, and I do post the interviews that I do when
Okay.
I'm able to do that. And so, if people want to follow me on X, I'm at Pardy Bruce. We have
Yeah.
a website for the Rights Probe think tank that you referred to. That's at rightsprobe.org. And I also have a
Okay.
Substack that people can sign up for
Yes.
free. Obviously, bruceparty.substack.com. Thank you for asking. And thank you for having me on. It's been really great.
Oh no, that's good. Thanks for your time. I've learned a lot from people like you, just behind the scenes, if you will, and I try to do my part, right, with the time that I have available to help. So thank you, Bruce, and yeah, I'll get this all done up, and we'll talk to you some other time. And
It's
thank
been a
you
real
again.
pleasure. Thanks. Good to talk to
Yeah.
you again. Okay.